Imagine your alarm clock going off, like at 6 in the morning.
Hmm.
But it is not just a repetitive electronic beeping sound.
Right, something you can just hit snooze on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine if, instead of just ringing, your alarm clock actively scoops up handfuls of dirt and throws them directly into your face, over and over, until you physically get out of bed.
It sounds like the most aggressive, hostile wake-up call imaginable.
It really does.
Something designed purely to annoy you.
Oh, I would throw the clock out the window immediately. I mean, you're just trying to sleep,
Yeah.
and something is relentlessly pelting you with soil.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
But in the ecosystem we're diving into today, this isn't some bizarre torture device. It is just a typical Tuesday morning in the African savannah. And the alarm clock in this scenario is a bird called the southern yellow-billed hornbill.
And the sleepy residents getting dirt thrown at them.
Right. That would be a family of banded mongooses hiding deep inside a hollowed-out termite mound.
Which, challenges a very core assumption we tend to make about the animal kingdom. Well, we usually picture nature as this zero-sum game. A ruthless, endless competition where the strongest survive and everything else just gets eaten.
The whole survival of the fittest thing.
Exactly. But the sources we're exploring today highlight a completely different survival strategy. It's all about asymmetric value and mutual benefit.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are unpacking this fascinating case study about the ultimate smart wildlife partnership.
It really is a masterclass in collaboration.
It is. So for anyone listening to this right now, especially, if you're navigating complex teams at work or trying to build better professional relationships, or even just looking for ways to collaborate without feeling like you're constantly compromising, this is going to completely reframe how you look at partnerships.
Because if a bird and a pack of mongooses can optimize their morning routines together, you can probably take a few notes for your next quarterly planning meeting.
For sure. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the biology of that whole dirt-throwing morning routine.
Yeah, so during the colder months on the savannah, temperatures drop significantly overnight. And banded mongooses are, they're pretty small mammals.
Yeah.
Because of their high surface area to volume ratio, they lose body heat very quickly.
So they get cold fast.
Exactly. To survive the night, they pack closely together in the depths of their termite mound to conserve warmth. They enter this really deep state of rest, and they want to stay there until the sun is high enough to actually warm the ground outside.
So they hit the snooze button repeatedly.
They certainly try to, but their longtime companion, the hornbill, has a completely different physiology.
Because it's a bird.
Right, it's a bird. It has a layer of insulating feathers and a totally different metabolic clock. So the bird is awake, it is hungry, and it needs the mongooses to get moving so it can get breakfast.
So it takes matters into its own hands.
Literally, or beak, I should say. It marches right up to the entrance of the termite mound, uses its beak, and literally tosses dirt straight into the hole.
That is just so disrespectful.
Over and over, until the sleepy mongooses have no choice but to poke their tired little faces outside.
See, I have to stop you here, because on the surface, this bird sounds like a complete parasite. I mean, it's forcing its neighbors out of bed for its own selfish needs.
It definitely looks that way at first glance.
And according to the sources, after it aggressively wakes them up, it just stands around. Because the mongooses completely refuse to be rushed.
Yeah, the hornbill dictates the wake-up time, but the mongooses dictate the pace.
They're not going to be hurried.
Not at all. Once they are out of the mound, they have a very strict biological rhythm to attend to.
The morning routine.
Right. First, they find a patch of sunlight to thermoregulate, raising their core temperatures back up. Then they groom themselves thoroughly to remove parasites. It's only when a specific chemical threshold of readiness is reached that the group finally begins to move out.
And right before they leave, they do something absolutely bizarre.
Oh, the scent marking.
Yes.
No.
They don't just rub their cheeks against a rock to mark their territory like a house cat. They perform a literal handstand.
It is a very acrobatic, deliberate behavior.
I mean, I'm just picturing a mongoose doing gymnastics.
That's basically what it is. They lift their hind legs completely off the ground, balance on their front paws, and back their rear ends up against a tree or a rock.
Wow.
Yeah, and they do this to leave secretions from their anal glands as high up on the surface as physically possible.
It is the animal kingdom equivalent of wearing platform shoes to intimidate a bouncer at a club. I just love this detail.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
By raising their bodies up into a handstand, they are intentionally leaving their scent at a much greater height. They're tricking intruding predators into sniffing that mark and thinking, whoa, the animal that left this scent is massive.
Yeah, it is a brilliant form of spatial bluffing, and it relies heavily on chemical ecology.
What do you mean?
Well, the pheromones in those glandular secretions contain a wealth of data. They encode the size of the pack, their health, their identity. but volatile chemical compounds degrade over time.
Right, the scent fades.
Exactly. So if a predator or a rival pack finds a strong, fresh scent mark very high off the ground, the biological math tells them they are dealing with a tall, active, and potentially dangerous resident.
That is so smart. Okay, but let's go back to the bird. The hornbill is just sitting there starving, watching a pack of small mammals do gymnastics and sunbathe.
So waiting around, yeah.
Why does the bird put up with this diva-like morning routine? If I'm the bird, I mean, I'm flying off to find my own food.
To understand the bird's patience, you have to understand the specific mechanical advantage that the banded mongoose possesses.
Which is their nose, right?
Yes, mongooses have exceptionally large olfactory bulbs relative to their brain size. They walk with their noses pressed close to the earth, and they can detect prey hidden entirely out of sight, just buried beneath the hard soil.
And they aren't looking for, like, earthworms. They are hunting things that would send a human straight to the emergency room.
Oh, absolutely. Scorpions, venomous spiders, massive centipedes.
Which requires another incredible biological adaptation, because banded mongooses are actually among the most venom-resistant animals on the savannah.
They really are. Over millions of years of evolutionary pressure, the acetylcholine receptors in their nervous systems have actually mutated.
Wait, how does that work?
So when a highly venomous scorpion stings a mongoose, the neurotoxin simply cannot bind to the mongoose's nerve and muscle receptors.
That's insane.
Yeah, the venom just bounces off, chemically speaking. They can eat a deathstalker scorpion like it's a potato chip.
That is wild. So you have a pack of highly specialized venom-immune excavators. When they find a target, they start digging furiously. Dirt is flying everywhere, roots are being torn up, the ground is just being completely excavated.
And that excavation creates a massive disturbance zone. All of that digging flushes out collateral insects, beetles, lizards, crickets, things that were hiding in the brush. These creatures scramble out from their cover to escape the mongooses.
And here comes the bird.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that the hornbill simply swoops in, using its long curved bill to effortlessly snatch up all these fleeing insects.
It transforms the dusty savannah into a mobile dining table.
A buffet on the go.
The mongooses kick up the food, and the bird just strolls along behind them, dining on whatever pops up.
But wait, if I'm the mongoose in this scenario, I'm doing all the manual labor.
True.
I'm digging in the baked clay, risking scorpion stings, and this bird is just swooping in and eating the lizards I scared out of hiding. Isn't this just kleptoparasitism? Like, why don't the mongooses just bare their teeth and chase the freeloader away?
Well, if the hornbill were truly a parasite, evolutionary pressure would have taught the mongooses to drive it away long ago. Parasitism is a huge drain on resources.
So they must be getting something out of it. Exactly. This relationship is a highly evolved mutualism based on comparative advantage. The mongooses tolerate the bird taking a few beetles because they are outsourcing something they are biologically terrible at.
Right. They have an incredible sense of smell, but their vision is a massive vulnerability.
Their long-distance vision is incredibly poor. As ground-dwelling mammals, their eyes are positioned and adapted for close-up, monocular focus right in the dirt.
Because they're always looking down for food.
Yeah, they are constantly looking down. Their field of peripheral vision is limited, and they simply cannot focus on objects at high altitudes. They literally cannot see what is coming from above.
And what's coming from above is the martial eagle.
A very serious threat.
The sources highlight this as their primary apex predator. It is a massive bird of prey that circles high above the thermals. And it doesn't screech or, cast a shadow to warn them.
No, it's a stealth hunter.
It silently drops from the sky, and the mongooses have absolutely zero chance of seeing it coming until talons are already in their backs.
Which is where the hornbill pays its dues. The hornbill isn't just eating, it is providing a state-of-the-art cybersecurity system.
Because birds have great eyesight.
Vastly superior to mammalian vision. Birds have a much higher density of photoreceptors in their retinas, and many have a fovea, which is a small pit in the retina that provides incredibly sharp focal length.
So this basically got binoculars built in.
Exactly. The hornbill can spot a martial eagle circling from miles away.
So why doesn't the martial eagle just eat the hornbill? I mean, the hornbill's the one sitting up high, making noise, drawing attention to itself.
It comes down to predatory cost-benefit analysis and maneuverability. A martial eagle is like a heavy bomber. It relies on high-speed vertical drops in open space.
Oh, I see.
And a hornbill is highly agile. It operates in the complex branches of acacia trees. It's very difficult for an eagle to catch a hornbill in a dense canopy.
But the mongooses are just out there in the open.
Right. Mongooses are foraging in the open dirt. They are fleshy, relatively slow in a sprint, and completely blind to vertical threats. They are the ideal target.
But the hornbill sees the threat. And the moment it detects that eagle, it sounds the alarm. The sources describe the hornbill emitting these rapid, urgent calls and making loud, frantic wing beats. It intentionally fills the air with chaos.
And the mongooses don't even look up to verify the threat. They trust the data implicitly.
They just run.
The reaction is instantaneous. The entire group abandons their foraging and sprints at top speed toward the nearest termite mound or thorny bush. They just vanish into the earth.
And then they just sit in the dark, heart-pounding, waiting, while the hornbill stays on duty. It watches the sky until the eagle gives up and leaves the area.
It's a very tense standoff.
And then the hornbill switches its vocalizations from those rapid, panicked alarms to a series of softer, rhythmic calls. It gives the all clear, and only then do the mongooses emerge and go back to hunting.
Let's break down the economics of this trade, because it perfectly illustrates the concept of asymmetric value. In human relationships, we often get caught up in trying to make everything a perfect 50-50 reciprocal split.
Everything has to be exactly equal.
Right. But in nature, the best partnerships exchange unequal currencies. For the hornbill, the energetic cost of looking up and squawking when it sees a predator is basically zero. It was already perched there anyway.
And for the mongoose, the cost is just the incidental lizards and beetles that scurry away during the dig. Things they probably weren't going to eat anyway because they were so focused on finding scorpions.
Precisely. You are exchanging what is incredibly cheap and abundant for you in return for something you physically cannot do yourself.
That makes so much sense.
The hornbill's eyesight is cheap for the bird, but it is literally the difference between life and death for the mongoose. And the mongoose's earth-moving capability is a massive energy saver for the bird. The value is asymmetric, which is what makes it such a resilient partnership.
I really want you, the listener, to pause and think about the costs in your own environments. Like, are you trying to split the workload perfectly in half with a colleague? Or are you looking for a partner whose natural, effortless talents cover your biggest blind spots? Because here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this next part is wild.
Just when you think you understand this neat little two-way street between the bird and the mammal, a third, massive player enters the chat.
It is a phenomenal example of how mutualistic networks expand.
So picture the scene. The pack is back to foraging. The hornbill is eating. Suddenly, the hornbill stops feeding. It flies to a higher branch and sounds another alarm.
And it's a different call this time.
Right. It's not the eagle, but it's a warning of a large animal approaching through the tall grass. The mongooses instantly drop what they're doing. The tension spikes.
It appears to be another life or death evasion scenario.
But the dominant mongoose, the leader of the pack, pauses. It looks at this massive animal lumbering out of the brush. The alarm call from the hornbill suddenly stops. A completely new, chattering call takes its place among the mongoose pack.
They're communicating with each other now.
Yeah. And instead of diving into the tunnels, the mongooses turn around and sprint straight toward this huge animal.
A giant, intimidating warthog.
Now, mongooses eat bugs and scorpions. They do not eat warthogs. So why on earth are they running toward a 300-pound animal with razor-sharp tusks?
To solve that mystery, we have to look at the warthog's specific biological struggles. Warthogs are large animals living under the brutal African sun, and crucially, they do not have sweat glands.
So they can't sweat to cool down.
No, they can't. To cool down and protect their skin from UV radiation, they wallow in mud holes. They coat themselves in a thick layer of wet clay.
Which acts like a natural sunscreen.
It does, but as that mud dries in the sun, it shrinks. It forms deep, hardened cracks, crevices, and folds all across the warthog's body. And those protected cracks become the absolute perfect hiding spot for ectoparasites, specifically ticks.
Ticks are a nightmare in any ecosystem.
In Savannah, they are a severe burden. They are vectors for diseases like African swine fever, they cause intense irritation, and a warthog simply does not have the dexterity or the appendages to groom its own back or ears to remove them.
Okay, I see where this is going. The warthog is covered in highly nutritious bugs that it can't reach. And the mongooses are highly specialized bug hunters.
It is what biologists call a cleaning symbiosis. The warthog actually seeks out the mongoose pack.
It finds them on purpose.
Yes, it approaches them, lies down in the dirt, and completely submits. And the mongooses eagerly swarm the massive animal. They climb onto its shoulders, scramble up its back, and perch on its face.
That is quite an image.
They use their specialized close-up vision and sharp little teeth to meticulously pluck the swollen ticks right out of the warthog's skin.
It is a literal day spa for the warthog. A deep cleaning exfoliation service. And for the mongooses, they don't even have to dig through the hard clay for a meal. They are handed a dense, high-protein buffet of ticks on a silver platter, or rather, a muddy pig.
And don't forget the original partner.
The hornbill.
Right. The hornbill is still perched up in the tree, or hopping around the periphery, snatching up any larger insects, like grasshoppers, that the warthog flushed out of the grass when it came lumbering into the clearing.
So we have three entirely different species. A bird, a small carnivore, and a massive herbivore. Three completely different evolutionary lineages, physical structures, and vulnerabilities. Yet they have managed to form this three-way mutualistic triad where absolutely nothing is wasted.
It really highlights the flaw in viewing nature or any complex system strictly through the lens of pure competition. If survival only relied on brute strength, independence, and hoarding resources, the mongoose and the hornbill would have gone extinct long ago.
Because they wouldn't have survived the predators or the starvation?
Exactly, they survive and thrive specifically because they integrate their unique capabilities to support each other's evolutionary blind spots.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all mean? Well, it means we need to stop romanticizing the idea of total independence. In our human world, we are constantly taught to view our environments, especially our workplaces and industries, as zero-sum games. We're taught that for us to win, someone else has to lose.
That's a very limiting mindset.
It is. We guard our resources, we hide our weaknesses, and we try to do everything ourselves.
But the mathematics of evolution prove that cooperative, non-zero-sum interactions are vastly superior for long-term survival. Interdependence isn't a weakness. It is a highly advanced strategy for expanding the pie.
Exactly. Millions of years of rigorous, unforgiving evolutionary pressure didn't result in the mongoose learning to fight off eagles alone. It resulted in the mongoose teaming up with the hornbill.
It's the ultimate partnership.
So as you go through the rest of your week, I want you to look at your own highly competitive environments differently. Stop looking for rivals and ask yourself, who is the hornbill to your mongoose? What is effortless for them but invaluable to you? And are you missing a chance to build your own mutual survival strategy?